flame on. It's a new revolution, babies. This particular Dragon Barrows Nerdsville, it's dedicated to what I loved as a child. Back when I was a child, it was the 1980s. The 1980s had wonderful things. It's it's when the great animated franchises began. With it being Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Dragon Ball, and great pieces of music like George Michael and also Wham. Everything just was so brilliant and bold, and that was actually the decade I discovered professional wrestling in. Like seeing, big bright colors is immense and amazing. And the fashion, the fashion was the best era to go, alright, how am I going to do this? What theme party can I put together? Then you start thinking. Then you realize you got from 19, December 31st, 1979 through to the last 10 minutes of 1979 through to the first 10 minutes of 1990. 10 to 12, 31st of December 1979 through to the 10 past 12 of January 1st, 1990. And all those spaces, all the time in between, best year for costumes to be thought of. I can think back with fond memory watching a wrestling VHS tape with the Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk, taking on the two members of the Four Horsemen. And you just got that sense of like on a reflective, more of like on more back, thinking back on reflection, you got the idea that one particular thing that you would think that was big and nasty and bit on the comical side, like the Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk, like with like the hawk with the perfected mohawk, and animal with the singular mohawk, face painting, wearing black and looks like something you would see in a Saturday morning cartoon, taking on someone like a team that looked like college or university prep teenagers. Then you look. Then you would most probably look at how that one decade spawned so much. Mario, Sonic, Pac-Man, Zelda. Before the 1980s, you would not have known what people were talking about. One of the things, let's see, Zelda. Well, over here in Australia, Zelda could have been the name of a Greek immigrant's daughter. So, like a person who came over here as a child after World War II, grew up and calling their daughter Zelda. That would have been the only time you would have heard Zelda prior to the 1980s. Prior to the 1980s, Mario, as in Mario from the Super Mario Brothers. The only time when you would have heard Mario being used would have just been used as a typical male name prior to the 1980s. Just how the name progressed from being just a male name to being a iconic flummer. It just took one decade, and that decade was the 80s. Sonic, as in that blue hedgehog. Sonic would have been something that you would have seen in science fiction, as with Doctor Who, the Sonic Screwdriver, in B-grade movies, you would have heard the pilots of very fast planes would have said, "Oh, we're hitting supersonic speed. Let's crank the rockets up and go to light speed." That would have been the only time when you would have heard Sonic, or would have heard it saying Sonic Boom, as in the speed of the aircraft that you would have seen above your heads, in the skies above one's head. Alex is in Alex the Kid. Same thing, with just been a name for either a boy or a girl. Pac-Man would have been a description of an occupation. As to say, yep, I pack boxes from one warehouse and have those cataloging for something else. And that would have been the traditional Pac-Man. Another term prior to 1980s that would not have been heard, and this is more or less late 80s, late 80s when this show is starting to be thought of. Products were shown in the 90s. The Planeteer, as in a young child being planet savvy and would do anything for the planet. Planeteer would have just been more or less another one of those science fiction type things. Instead of saying Captain Planet and the Planeteers, it could have been Captain Trident, Earth's mightiest defender, and a squadron of throwaway characters would have been the Planeteers, as in other words, these guys would die in combat. There's so many terminology like pop culture things that you would have seen in the Dragon Ball, just in the manga and in the later on subsequent anime Dragon Ball, preceded of the Dragon Ball Z. If you were to say Dragon Ball prior to the late half of the 1980s, you would have thought it was just a toy, like a small ball with a dragon on it, right? Like some sort of weird Pete's Dragon, Puff the Magic Dragon. It could have been like collect all 14 Dragon Balls. Get ones from various stories. The dragon that protected the Golden Fleece. The dragon from the St. George stories. The dragon from Peace Dragon. The Good Luck Dragon from the Never-Ending Story. And you got these several dragons on balls, which can be classified as Dragon Balls. Prior to the creator of the Dragon Ball series doing all that. The terminology Sailor Moon would have been one of those B grade movies. With Sailor Moon being more of a princess than Princess Serena. And just whatever cartoon you would have thought of prior to the 1980s would have been used in another form, would have been used in a low-grade movie or something that you would have dreamt up being something more fantastic than an animation, comic, or title for a movie. Which, even like the movie Back to the Future, if you said that in the 1970s, people think you're bonkers. Back to meaning you're going back to something, then you say in the future, which is something that's yet to come. And those two things don't usually mesh well. The term breakdancing would have been something that you unintentionally done on the dance floor. Some like a bone it just broke. Then it's like the terminology boombox. Like not even just the terminology, like the item. Boombox would have been more or less lent towards a military type thing. The toys, straw, even this. I don't know if this keep on going with the. This sounds like this thing, and this thing sounds like that thing. But it is true. Like just in the toys itself, Rubik's cube could have. If you said Rubik's cube in the 1970s, you could think of it was like a smuggled out of East Europe movie, talking about some adventure going through a particular maze. Teddy Ruxpin could have been the name of some sort of geek or some sort of intellectual type person. Strawberry shortcake. Any woman in her right mind in the 1970s would be asking, "Oh, can I have the recipe for this strawberry shortcake?" Then you look at the Cabbage Patch Kids, like the term Cabbage Patch, the dolls. You look at, if you said it in the 1970s, it would have sounded very much like kids who work in the cabbage, like in cabbage patches. My Little Pony sounds like something that rich girls had. And the things go on and on and on. That's what I love. That's what I say I love about the 80s. Prior to the 80s, if you said one thing, like if you said like a TV show, toy, some sort of technology, even saying I'm going to tape you, people would more think, hang on, why would this person want to sticky tape me, sticky tape me to anything? Even the terminology rap, as in the music that came out of the 80s, they say, "Oh, I'm a rap star." People would think that you were like high in the gift wrapping scene of a very big department store, like Grace Brothers, Meyer, and I'm just using over here in Australia, Kmart, Big W. People think that you were that sort of person, like, and just to say I'm a rap star, you're saying that you're the best, and it means that you could rap X number of gifts and presents and that in 10 minutes. Then you look at just then you look at MTV. Like no, then you look to the music. As I made mention, the rap spelled R-A-P. Then you would have had some MTV in its most purest form, not the bullshit that it has become today. The station that actually put on music instead of this bullshit with silicone, unintelligent 20-something losers with attitudes that they subsequently rule the world. On top of that, celebrating the fact of single motherhood, which is pretty stupid. That's when MTV was fine. It was actually pure MTV. And with these two movies, these two coming of age movies, I honestly love The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It the most, even 16 Candles, like you look at, it's just, firstly you look at 16 Candles, a young woman going through her teenage years, trying to discover who she is. Then you look at the Breakfast Club, where you got different students with different youths with different backgrounds. You got the jock, you got the loner, you got the geek, you got the popular girl, you got the emo girl. All of them been put on detention for one reason or another, and they had to come into a school on Saturday where they had to do things, and there was an angry teacher that didn't like them. And just took it a bit further and further on with not only the antics, but what the these young teens were going through at the time. And some of them was emotional family problems. Some of them were going through a lot of pressure to be the best, especially with the jock. He later found, or how it was later found out that, I won't spoil the movie. He was pressured to be the best, or he felt like he had to have pressure. He felt like the pressure was on him. Then also it's Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Just kids wagging school, and just having that wagging school part. It was like if you were a teenager back then, and I was a teenager in the 90s when this movie became relevant to me, but still, just putting Ferris Bueller's Day Off, sitting down with a drink, and sadly I said I finished these snacks. You'd see, like, you go, Whoa. I wonder if I can get away with it. You know, and I thank God for a medical condition. I lived Ferris Bueller's Day Off for 3 years of my life on Tuesdays. The medical condition was I couldn't do any sport. And I had which limited my activities. And I got to go home. As soon as the lunch bell rang, I signed out and I walked out to my youthful exuberance, as they say. If I had the money on me, I would have went to the local McDonald's. And I even hired VHS tapes after VHS tapes. If I had a couple of dollars on me, like if I had $10, I would have hired 10 DVDs on my parents' card. I watched them, then send the DVDs back, and they were like the weeklies, which by the end of the 90s ended up becoming like $1.50 because everything going to DVD and that. So things didn't exactly pan well with that side. Then you look at the music of the time as well. It was brilliant, like Michael Jackson. If you said in the if you said in the 1970s that Michael Jackson is going to be doing a solo career from the Jackson 5, people would have literally laughed at your face, saying, "Oh, Michael Jackson will never do that to his brothers." Then you look at the Pina Colada song from Robert Holmes. That was the first hit of the 1980s. Though it was late, extremely late 1970s, but actually it was the first. It was the decade, the first one that actually was like that, took that step into being an 80s song. Then Rock With You from Michael Jackson when he did become a solo act. Pink Floyd with Another Brick in the Wall. Call Me from Blondie. Funky Town from Lips Inc. Another One Bites the Dust from Queen. Then in 1981 you got 9 to 5 from Dolly Parton. Betty Davis Eyes from Kim Carnes. Answer Play with The One That You Love. Jesse's Girl from Rick Springfield. Physical from Olivia Newton-John, which was from November 21st of 1981 to January 29th of 1982. Let's look at the year that I was born. I was born in 1982. And according to this I'm reading here, I Have the Tiger from Survivor was my birth song. Even Tony Basil singing Mickey was in the same year I was born. Then you got Maneater from Hall & Oates, which is from the previous year, 1982. Now we're in 1983. Down Under with Men at Work, Africa with Toto. A couple of hits later was Beat It from Michael Jackson. Sometime later was Total Eclipse of the Heart from Bonnie Tyler. And going to 1984. You had Charming Chameleon from Culture Club, Jump from Van Halen, Footloose from Kenny Loggins, Against All Odds, Take a Look at Me Now from Phil Collins. Kenny Loggins from Footloose, Against All Odds, Phil Collins, sorry. Hello from Lionel Richie. Then you got Ray Parker Jr. with Ghostbusters. Madonna's Like a Virgin. And Wake Me Up Before You Go with Wham. And you look at 1985, you have great hits like Careless Whisper from Wham, Can't Fight This Feeling from REO Speedwagon, Heaven from Bryan Adams, A View to a Kill from Duran Duran, The Power of Love from Huey Lewis and the News, Take On Me by Aha, Broken Wings from Mr. Mister, and prior to that was We Built This City from Starship. 1986 came around with That's What Friends Are For with Dionne Warwick featuring Elton John, Gladys Knight and Stevie Wonder. You got Sarah from Starship, These Dreams from Heart, Falco's Rock Me Amadeus, the West End Girls from the Pet Shop Boys, Addicted to Love from Robert Palmer, Papa Don't Preach from Madonna, Venus from Bananarama, Amanda from Boston, Human from Human League, You Give Love a Bad Name from Bon Jovi, and then the last one from 1987, Walk Like an Egyptian from the Bangles, which ended up being 86 into 87. Then from 87 onwards, you've got Living on a Prayer from Bon Jovi, Jacob's Ladder from Huey Lewis and the News, starships with "You're Not Gonna Stop Us Now." Without you, from you too. Kim Wilde was "You keep hanging, you keep hanging, you keep me hanging on." Sorry, I'm dyslexic, so that's. And you got Madonna with "Who's That Girl?" La Bamba from Los Lobos. Just Can't Stop Loving You from Michael Jackson. Then you got Here I Go Again from Whitesnake. Bad from Michael Jackson. Heaven is a Place on Earth from Belinda Carlisle. Faith Through. The last one from the last on Top of the Pops. Song from 1987 to the first June of 1988. George Michael's with Faith, and you got You Need Me in 1988. You got Need Me Tonight. You got from NXS. You got Man in the Mirror from Michael Jackson. Wishing Well from Terence Trent D'Arby. And you got One More Try from George Michael. Rick Astley with Rick Astley with Together Forever. Then let me see. The Flame from Cheap Tricks. Roll With It from Steve Vinewood. George Michael with Monkey. Groovy Kind of Love from Phil Collins. Then you got the last one from, which is Poison. Poison's Every Rose Has a Thorn. Then to the last year of the 80s with these great hits. You got let's see here, Straight Up from Paula Abdul. Mike and the Mechanics with The Living Years. Eternal Flame from the Bangals. Look at the Look from Roxette. She Drives Me Crazy, Fine Young Cannibals. Like a Prayer from Madonna. Rock On from Michael Damian. Ben Millie, The Wind Beneath Wind Beneath My Wings. Good Things from Fine Young Cannibals. Simply Red's If You Don't. You're from Simply Red. If You Don't Know Me By Now. Toy Soldiers from Canada. Hanging Tough from New Kids on the Block. Gloria Stefanos, I Don't Wanna Lose You. Listen to Your Heart from Roxette. Bad English had When I See You Smile. And to round off the last two Top of the Pop songs / artists of the 1980s was We Didn't Start the Fight from Billy Joel from the 9th to the 22nd of December 1980, and Another Day in Paradise from Phil Collins, December 23rd of 1989 through to January 13th of 1990. And most of the songs that were sung back then have either been covered or re-sung in a different form by artists of today. And to go back to my favorite sport, professional wrestling. It was the boom of professional wrestling. The golden era. They've been great wrestlers from that era.
Is it a house? No, it's a truck. Truck. So it's not a house. It is a house.
Sorry about that, it was just a bloody ad. I hate them. But back then you had the talented Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. You had Axe and Smash of Demolition. The Road Warriors. You had the Dingo Warrior, which later on became the Ultimate Warrior. Hulk Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter, Colonel, the Iron Sheik, Bob Backlund. You have the Rockers, the Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. We've got I don't think the Kane or the Unabomber, but it could be. But then you got Texas Red and Percy Pringle, who later on became The Undertaker and his manager Paul Bearer. You got just so many beautiful characters like Big John Studd, Junkyard Dog, Tito Santana, Rick the Modeler, Martel, Jake the Snake Roberts, and all of them. Like, you got all these great matches, and those some of the title belts of the time will put the bland ones from WWE now into shame. Like the 1986 Hulk Hogan Championship belt. That was beautifully done. You got title belts from World Class Championship Wrestling, NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling, the WWF, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and you got all the AWA, and you got all these beautiful retro companies that have had wonderful design championship belts. NWA, WCW, oh, their TV title just makes my heart flutter. And the United States title, but when it had the two side plates, makes my heart go because you've seen the prestigiousness of those belts, and you knew that the prestige was given to the right person. Then the music came into it as well. Which in decades before had nothing. Then you look at other sports, like over here in Australia, the rugby league decided to do a thing called the State of Origin, and in the State of Origin, you had, if you came from Queensland, if you started your rugby league career in Queensland before moving to New South Wales for the main the ARL thing, you played for Queensland. If you started your career playing in New South Wales, you played in you played for the New South Wales Blues, and Queensland have the Maroons. So the Blues and the Maroons went at it and they're still going at it to this day. Well, it's not even another of the wonderful tradition. Then you got the late '80s with the emergence of the baddest man on the planet, Mike Tyson. You got Carl Lewis, who was dominating the Olympic. He was like the Usain Bolt. If you look at Usain Bolt, Carl Lewis had that in the '80s. 30 years apart, but both of them put each other both in their primes. It would have been a very, very hard contest. Like then over here in Australia, we celebrated the bicentennial with 200 years since the first fleet entered Sydney Harbour, or what was now known as Sydney Harbour. And that's coming from an Australian point of view. Kids' cartoons back in the Australian '80s were Blinky Bill, and you more or less had these traditional Australian things, and Play School was heading in its 20th year. Just 2 years ago, celebrated its 50th. And there was like an ABC Kids program. Term programming? No. Nope. Upcoming? Nope. Previous programming? Nope. No. But I do wish that Art Attack was something when I was growing up. Oh, there was an educational program. Oh, I know the presenter Richard Moorcroft, yeah. He did a lot. with presenting behind the news. It was behind the news. It started off in the 80s, and it's still continuing on now. This type of TV show was more towards educating children about what the just say, let's just use an event from today. Rioting in the streets of the United States after Donald Trump won the election. I know in the 1980s Donald Trump was just was just another one of those businessmen that you didn't hear much of. But BTN or Behind the News would more or less do this to help the kids understand what is actually happening in the United States with the election of Donald Trump and some people not liking it. They would say the reason why these people are acting like this is because they believe that their vote didn't count, that their voice, that the person that they didn't want, that they wanted in, didn't get in, and that's the reason why they are acting like this and they shouldn't destroy buildings and cars, but that's the reason why they are doing it. And more or less trying to simplify the news. Another one would have been, another event could be, let me see, what's another modern day one? Well, let's use something from the 90s. Prince Charles divorcing Princess Di. They would have said the marriage, Prince Charles and Princess Di were married, but they didn't. But at the end, they didn't like each other, and that's the reason why they got divorced. They're simplifying it for their children. Something on the 80s scene, more like Lindsay Chamberlain. And there's a couple of issues that actually divided the nation, and BTN, or Behind the News, that started in the 1980s, and I'm so happy it's still going on now. Educated children on how simplified how things are going in a very growing, complex world. Then you just got so many things from the 80s that actually are continuing on now. Like great TV shows. more so over here in Australia, you have Neighbours and Home and Away. Great shows that started in the 1980s, still going strong now. Don't think the United States can boast in something similar. Maybe Days of Our Lives or Young and the Restless, or depending on who you talk to. Then you got with the advances in technology, from putting it something as big like an LP, a record, to going to something like this size for like bit, maybe something a bit larger in size with the CD, with the CD player, like in the late 80s. SBS came onto the scene back in the 1980s, the Special Broadcasting Network, or broadcasting system. It's just, it was a great, to be honest with you, it was a great, for me, 7 leading on to 8 years of my life. 7.5, pushing it, yeah. I saw a lot in that decade. Leg warmers coming in, I still think they're good. Madonna in her weird fashion. The decade that fashion forgot, but it may have been the decade that fashion forgot, but it will end up being the decade of the most requested time period costume parties ever in the late noughties and early 2010s. Then you got iconic names that are still around today in professional wrestling, like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. All icons. Sergeant Slaughter, Michael P. Hayes. And on the sporting scene, you got Mike Tyson, then you got Carl Lewis, you got Mr. McEnroe with tennis, Miss Sampras for Mr. McEnroe for tennis, and you got Miss Harding for ice skating. And you just got so much more to do with with what's going on now with, as I may mentioned earlier, the different gens of different kids things. Like the first generation of My Little Pony was in the 1980s. First generation Transformers, 1980s. Then you got great shows with that. You got Thundercats and Strawberry Shortcake and He-Man, She-Ra. and it's just, and all this stuff just piles and piles and piles and piles. I don't think anything of this decade. Well, I'm more than happy to be proven wrong, but I don't see anything happening in this decade being equally as monumental as what happened in the 1980s. And one last thing on this topic. Put on your leg warmers, listen to Footloose, and dance your heart out. Burn you later.